During the last few days, there have been some very disturbing events within the Ummah. The execution of the killer of Salman Taseer was greeted by some sections of the community as a reason to praise him and to call him a shaheed, even though he'd been executed for murder. They've been honouring this traitor who killed the person he was supposed to be guarding and giving justifications based on false evidence, lies, slanders. And I even read one where they said that the killer's fellow inmates thought he was a nice person and didn't deserve to suffer the punishment for his crime. These defences have involved red herrings, misapplying the Sharia, accusing Salman Taseer of insulting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and of encouraging others to do it, when what he actually did was stand up for justice and truth as a Muslim should and as an office bearer should. He didn't say that it was right to insult the Prophet, peace be upon him. He said that law had to be applied fairly to everyone, that the law couldn't just be bent and twisted because you wanted to kill somebody, that everybody, whether they're a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, whatever, should have an equal access to simple justice. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today refuting these arguments. We can talk for hours to foolish people, using reason, using truth, using the Kitabullah, and it doesn't move them at all. Rather, I want to look at what this incident, this dreadful incident, what it does to us, how it affects our concepts of Muslim unity and the Ummah. Unity has become something of a buzzword in Islam. We talk about our brotherhood and uniting. Is such a unity possible? I think of my own family. I'm different to my brother. I have different views, different tastes and habits to everyone in this room. And yet none of you, at least as far as I know, could be accused of not being a Muslim. The unity that is talked about is not a true unity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is truly united. He is completely whole. He's not just one, the separated number. He is one, the all-inclusive. We as an ummah cannot approach that unity. We will not become agreed on every topic and every issue in Islam. And do we want to be that united? Do we want to walk into a room and every time we speak, everyone just nods? It can be very pleasant when everyone nods at something you say. But I look around a room and I look for those whose eyes just say, hang on. And that's when I correct myself. Have I expressed what I meant to express? And secondly, have I expressed something that is true? Have I made a mistake in my referencing? Have I made a mistake in my reasoning? Why doesn't that person agree with me? But if they didn't disagree with me, I would never correct myself. I would continue in error, and it would become a collective error. And then it's a major problem. It's not just a problem for me, it's a problem for everyone who takes my wrong and acts upon it because they go, Amin knows what he's talking about. Not always. The unity I envisage is not the unity of normativity, of everyone doing the same thing at the same time for the same reason. It's a unity of diversity, that our very differences are what make us of value to each other and to the Ummah as a whole. Islam is portrayed in the West as being some kind of monolithic mind control machine, and all Muslims will react predictably and under guidance of theocratic dictators. This is very far from the truth, but it's also a truth that we lend credence to when we talk about unity, and we take that unity to the extent where we try to obscure or hide differences. I'm often asked at meetings, why did I raise an issue of contention between Muslims? We should pretend that we don't have any differences. Such pretense is lying. I have great differences with other Shia Muslims. I have great differences with some Sunni Muslims. What I also have is a great deal of agreement with them. And more importantly, I believe in their right to be different. When we unite to fight terror, aren't we becoming just like the terrorists? That we will all shoulder arms, march in time, and follow a common policy against them. What defeats the tyrants and the monoliths is individuals expressing their personal belief, being allowed and encouraged by the system to ask questions and to have different opinions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, I could have made you one people, but I didn't so that you'll know. He doesn't say what we're supposed to know. He doesn't say that you will know this at a certain point. But he reveals that the diversity is a tool for deriving knowledge, for purifying thought and action, not for suppressing difference. We've seen waves of takfir flooding the Ummah. Who has the authority to say that someone isn't a Muslim? Do we have it as a collective group to say this person isn't or is a Muslim? We only have the testimony that they give. And if they recite Shahada, who are we to say that they said it without belief? Now, in the argument over the execution of the murderer, they're saying he's a good Muslim and that he shouldn't have been executed. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says exactly the opposite. That a Muslim who kills another Muslim and is convicted should be executed. He's committed a crime so foul that we don't have punishments to deal with it. So whether the murderer is a Muslim or not, he faces, at least potentially, a death sentence for doing that. I don't personally like death sentences. I find no joy in killing people. Not that I've ever experimented with this hobby. But we have a duty to uphold law in these situations. And whether it's your closest relative or your worst enemy, it's your duty to uphold justice towards him. The test in Islam isn't in the performance of duties, it's whether those duties purify your actions and purify your thinking. Therefore, we have to hold tight to those principles. And we cannot simply make someone into a martyr because we think they've done something right. When we find or we think a law is wrong, we can protest against it. But common to all systems of law, when we mount that protest, when we mount the disobedience, we must accept any punishment that ensues. I heard this articulated very beautifully by a conservative politician, the late Lord Hailsham. And there was a shockwave in the studio when he came out with this. It was in the 1960s when there were student riots and strikes everywhere. And the interviewer asked him what they should do about all this. And he expounded this legal theory that the citizen has the right to protest but must accept the consequences of his action. Unfortunately, the present government doesn't see that, and if you protest too much, you may be subject to a drone strike. Are we concerned with winning these petty battles, or are we concerned with winning the greater fight between evil and good? If we want good to triumph, we must be better than our own expectations. This is what the religion demands of us. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us. And this is the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the AMI alayhi salam. Each one of you can respond to an event. I had someone say to me some flattering comments about things I've done about human rights. And I said, well, what have I done? Because I haven't freed any slaves, I haven't liberated any countries, and I have set a few people free, but we won't go into that. And she said, "You've got a voice. When there's an issue, you speak out." And so I said to her, "Well, you've got a voice. Why don't you speak out?" We have lots of brothers and sisters who talk about what they'd do if they were on the battlefield at Karbala. And yet when their neighbour is being oppressed, don't cause any trouble. We don't want anybody picking on us. We don't want our phone calls monitored by saying the wrong word. The nation is falling into a great and terrible disgrace, where people of moral conscience are becoming too frightened to speak. Are we as a people doing our duty if we stay silent? Over this killing, many people have stayed silent. And it's our Sunni brothers who are writing in social media, "Why are you all quiet? This man's a murderer. He's a traitor. Why are you being quiet?" While masjids in the UK hold ceremonies to honour him and call him Shaheed. Most of them are being quiet because of that fear of standing up, of standing out and becoming isolated. That isolation is the isolation of the desert. It's the isolation that the Spirit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks directly to the lonely heart. Rather than becoming isolated, you become embraced in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That people reject you or criticize you for defending someone is the greatest compliment you can get in this world. It's not people saying, "That was a nice talk. You told us what we know." It's when you say something and people say, "We needed to hear that." When you've stepped out into the lonely spot and said, "We have been wrong, all of us. We've all held our mouths shut when they should have been open, with the breath of truth gushing through to stand up against wrongs." This attack on Islam is mounted from within and must be responded to from within. There isn't an area where we can say it's okay for Muslims to do this. There isn't an area where we can say, "He's my Muslim brother, I'll keep quiet about this." The Quran is explicit. Uphold justice even against yourself, your near ones, or even your parents. And yet we go around saying, "Oh, what about unity? What about harmony?" If that unity and harmony costs my integrity and my truthfulness, then it is just disgrace. It's surrender to mob values. I don't care whether you agree with me or not. I'm compelled to say what I think is the nearest approximation to truth that I can manage. And if you're beating a dog, I will tell you you're wrong. We talk about the treasures of this world. The AMI have discussed this, that for a few pounds or a piece of property, would you sell your soul? Most of us will sell our soul and our family's souls just for a few words of praise from an ignorant mob. Worthless. Worthless in this world and totally worthless in the next. The choice is clear and it occurs every day. And I admonish us all that when those choices occur, choose to be lonely, choose to be isolated, and stand up for justice, because in that isolation you will find the truest friends that men can aspire to have. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My apologies for being so serious. I know you all like my jokes. Joking can be a form of worship. The Quran forbids us from making people the butt of a joke or using nicknames, offensive names. And so many jokes have to be rewritten. But we all have doubts. I'm a great believer in doubt. I have a strong skeptic approach to the world and events and data. And so I spend nights having doubts and queries about information and things I believe. Why do I believe it? What convinced me? If I can't work out what convinces me about faith, how can I convince anyone else? Why shouldn't they just sit there saying, he's just saying this because he doesn't know any better, or he's just paid to do this? So, I recently did a course on philosophy online, and there's a joke I'd like to share with you. Those of you who've done philosophy will know philosophical jokes tend to be quite unfunny, but I'm in a mood to torture you. A man is sleeping and he dreams that he has found the universal refutation, that he can defeat any philosophical argument. And as he dreams, Aristotle comes up to him and starts talking for hours. And at the end of it, the man uses the universal refutation. And Aristotle bursts into tears and runs away screaming. And then Plato walks in, and he talks for even longer. And the man uses the universal refutation. And Plato falls on his knees and bangs his head on the floor and saying, "No, no, no," and crawls out of the room on all fours. Then all the great philosophers appear before him. Kant comes in. He walks away a broken man. All of the great philosophers do this. And then the man in his dream says, hang on, I'm dreaming that I found the universal refutation. I must write it down. He wakes himself up, dashes to the dressing table, writes it down, and goes back to bed and sleeps all night. When he wakes up, he goes, hang on, I found the universal refutation. He goes to the dressing table and he reads what he'd written there. And there's one line on the paper and it says, so you say. And this is what we're confronted with whenever we put forward the good news. Who says? You say. Convince me. I'm sure you've all experienced the universal refutation. It's so simple, isn't it? And yet we spend our time thinking up complicated arguments when the simple question, who says so, is what people want answered. In our devotions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to carry that joke with us, because we don't want to be like the people who knock on your door and say, the Bible says so. Or the people we meet who say, the Quran says so. This involves a different kind of honesty. You have to open up your own chest before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open it wider. You have to let the person see the joy and the comfort that you find in Islam, and not just give them a set of abstract rules that they do a regression on, saying, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Why is that good? The proof of the rightness and the goodness of our teachings is in what your heart can express to another human being. You can argue rationally with people who wish to argue rationally. But when someone says to you, who said so? What proof have you got? Your proof is, look how healthy my heart beats. Look how well I sleep. Look how my brothers assist me and help me and support me. That comfort and security is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to the believers. And it is all we have to show. We don't have to prove the date of revelation or that other books said similar things before and work them out. It's good fun to do, but has anybody ever been convinced by that approach? Has anyone ever experienced the light, the warmth and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from our rational arguments? In fact, our rational arguments are like the decorations on a masjid. They're beautiful, they're symmetrical, they start and finish where they should, at least in a well-decorated masjid. But does anyone walk into a highly decorated masjid and say, oh, great decoration, now I believe in God? I've never heard anyone do that. I've heard interior decorators say, can I become a Muslim? It looks like good business. What moves them is when they have the religious experience, when they open their heart. And for some people, the decorations are an obstruction. They block people. Is religion just about material possession? Is religion just about law? Religion, the deen, is about a lot more. But that immense treasure doesn't exist in physical form. It exists within your hearts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you to expose your hearts in gentleness and love to other human beings. And this is what we all need to retain and to live upon. That we are not fulfilling our duties if we just fulfill our duties. That was quite Heraclitean, wasn't it? Our duty demands us to do more than what is demanded of us. And if we're not doing that more, then we're not doing enough. O Allah, bless Muhammad and his purified family and raise their status with you in the world. Of Fatima bint Muhammad, wa Ali ibn Abu Talib, wa Al-Hasan ibn Ali, wa Al-Hussein ibn Ali, wa Ali ibn Al-Hussein, wa Muhammad ibn Ali, wa Jafar ibn Muhammad, wa Musa ibn Jafar, wa Ali ibn Musa, wa Muhammad ibn Ali, wa Ali ibn Muhammad, wa Hassan ibn Ali, wa Al-Mahdi al-Muntazar, alayhim as-salam.